The content DC is creating isn't what people want to consume. We're sick and tired of stories with identity politics and boring, bland characters. I've talked a few times now about DC sales declining and their terrible new gimmicks, and there's been a lot of speculation surrounding the direction they want to go in. Some people think they'll start listening to consumers and release better stories, and others think the company is too far gone at this point. But of course, they're continuing down the path of failure. Unsurprisingly, and new sales numbers show DC Comics' woke Superman is a loser. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month, or supporting the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So I wanted to start off with this Bounding Into Comics article. It says, despite Tom Taylor's deflection, new sales numbers show DC Comics' woke Superman is a loser. And of course, DC Comics and Marvel, they've put out a lot of bad content, but they still create some half-decent content that does sell. It's not like they're creating no content that sells. Unfortunately, more often than not, though, their content is terrible. It says the latest numbers for DC Comics' new woke Superman series, Superman Son of Kal-El, show the book is a loser despite writer Tom Taylor's claims to the contrary. He had come out a few weeks ago saying it was selling really well, it was doing really well, there's a lot of interest in this series, and a lot of us just kind of believed him. But numbers are showing quite the opposite. It says towards the end of January, he took to Twitter to try and deflect from sales data that showed Superman Son of Kal-El was a sales loser. He wrote, "Wow, stick around for the end of this, it's worth it. Today I woke up to piles of strangers in my mentions attacking the sales of Superman Son of Kal-El issue number 6 and celebrating the failure of our comic." And of course, he wrote, "Now, this was pretty confusing. I don't believe a story's worth is a measure by its sales, but our Superman is selling pretty well. Issue number 5, where John Kent comes out as bisexual, made the top 10 in comic sales for November." And he continued on by saying, "I get there are some who want to see this series fail for some pretty obvious and awful reasons, but it's not failing." Now, I personally don't have a problem with bisexual representation in media. I don't have problems with any representation in media. I just want it to be done in a good way, a meaningful way. I don't want it to just be shoved in our faces and writers going, "Hey, you have to buy our products," whether it's comic books, movies, whatever the case may be, or else you're an ist and you're a phobe and you're a terrible person, which unfortunately is what most of them do at this point. If you're gonna put this type of content into a story, just do it. You don't have to tell us in the world, "Oh my gosh, look at us, we're so inclusive with our stories." Just create the content and then we'll consume it. Look, I get that comics have always had political elements to them, but they didn't encompass the identity of the character and were more about the moral of the story. Now what we're being given is simply the politics are the only things that matter about the character. Next, he claimed the book had actually sold out, and this is a pretty big statement to make. However, it says this is industry language to try and convince people it had good sales. Of course, when you hear something sold out, you think, "Oh my gosh, like this is selling like hotcakes. This is doing really well." All of this is not true. As far as we know, none of this is true. He said, "Far from it, issues 1 to 4 of Superman Son of Kal-El all sold out and went back for a second printing." My first question here would be, how many did you print in the first place? If it's sold out, I guess it could sell out if you're creating like tiny amounts of it. And then he continued, "Issue 5 well outsold our first issue, even though our first issue had to be reprinted twice. So what's happening here?" Again, he's not saying, "Oh, we printed this many and that many and it outsold twice." He's just simply saying, "Oh, it's sold out. Just believe me." He then pointed to an Amazon sales chart, which again doesn't actually show how many comics are being sold. If I wanted to prove someone wrong who was saying it wasn't selling well, my number one way to do so would be showing the numbers, saying this many sold, here's the facts, here's the evidence, but he didn't do that. All he did was say, look at the Amazon top sales charts, oh my gosh, it's selling so well, clearly it's not a failure, but it doesn't show actual sales numbers, which for me is a giant red flag. It says maybe we should check how the latest issue is doing over Comixology. Oh, it's in the top 10 alongside some sales juggernauts. But, of course, he mocked websites like Cosmic Book News, saying, but then how is this true? Fans reject woke Superman. DC Comics sales are terrifying. He went on to attack RK Outpost as well, many people's videos, but of course he didn't bring up any videos that females made about the situation. Unsurprisingly, these people are too afraid to acknowledge females are criticizing their work too. But scrolling on down, it says, unfortunately for Taylor's entire thread, his punchline is a complete lie, as anyone who read our reporting would know. The annual for Superman, Son of Kal-El, did come out in December, and it fell off the top 50 chart completely when it came to unit sales. The book did place 45 on ICV2's top 50 comic books by dollars chart in December. Not only was his narrative shoddy when he posted all of these tweets in January, but the new January sales charts for ICV2 confirm it. Superman, Son of Kal-El number 6 barely made it onto the unit chart. It was in 42nd place. On the top 50 comic books by dollar chart, it was in 50th, dead last on the list. Clearly, these are not numbers where a book sells out and people are loving it, it's doing amazing. People are saying this is one of the best series to come out in years. These numbers are very, very mediocre, terrible even. It was clear in January that Taylor's thread was a deflection, given he never showed any numbers, and it's abundantly clear now. I wonder what else he's going to say now, who else he's going to attack now that there is legitimate evidence out there that this book is not doing well. It's likely without another major gimmick like making Superman gay, which is what they did in Son of Kal-El 5, that the book will fall off the charts in February. There might be people out there who want to read this type of content, but clearly not enough people. Clearly, the majority of your audience doesn't want this content. We just want good content with good stories, good writing, awesome characters. And a lot of people are saying, yeah, I guess it's fine you're making the Son of Kal-El part of the LGBT, but you actually have to have good writing along with that. That can't just be the main focus of a character. You have to have other characteristics for people to want to read this type of story. Being bisexual can't just be the number one descriptor of a character and then it sells like hotcakes. I don't know what these writers don't understand about that. But it says DC Comics and Marvel Comics are not in good shape despite what people like Taylor will try and convey. DC is a shell of the company they once were. Of course, as long as they've existed, they've put out hit and miss stories. Not everything they used to write was top of the line, super amazing content, but it used to be like 70% of their content was good and 30% was bad. But it's switched now. 70 to 80% is garbage now, and it's really disappointing. I want their content to be good, but they're not even trying at this point to hire good writers and great artists to create fantastic stories. They're focused on the inclusivity and the diversity. They're focused on the pandering. It's not working out for them. Former Marvel Comics writer Kelly Sue DeConnick was also honest about the state of the comic book industry in a 2019 interview. She stated, "Boy, that's hard because from our perspective, the industry has contracted and we're very worried about comics right now. So it's always interesting to me to see that the outside perspective is always comics are booming." I've talked about it many times on the channel, but comics are not booming, and comics haven't been booming for a couple of years. At least the mainstream comics have been doing really, really mediocre. It's because the change in content. People do not want the content that they are putting out and that they are writing and producing, and people just want to go back to the good days of DC and Marvel when they were actually writing things that weren't focused on identity politics, shoving narratives into our faces. That's all they're putting out now. On one hand, it is pretty disappointing to see DC and Marvel do so badly because I have loved them for so many years, but I don't really care at this point what happens to them. I do not want to see stories about Superman striking for climate change. I don't want to see narratives and identity politics shoved into my face every time I open a comic book. Maybe they can change their ways, who knows? But clearly, some of the writers that are at DC, like Tom Taylor, don't want the industry to change. It's like they want to continue to kill the very industry they claim to care about. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.